Hello once again, I'm Extra Life, and I've been practicing my drum rudiments here on the practice pad, which is a great way to practice your timekeeping and your drum playing when you don't have a drum set in front of you, and when you don't want to annoy the living daylights out of your neighbors. But of course, playing with your hands is only half of a drum set, so I've been practicing my footwork on this device right here, which is my version of a homemade kick drum practice pad. And it's something that I iterated on a little bit and came up with after a little bit of experimentation. So today I would like to show you how I designed and built this out of found materials. So this up to now is how I have been using the pedal. Basically I just set it pretty close to my couch and set the beater height so that it impacts the side of the couch cushion, and then I can set my foot on the pedal and drum away. And that works reasonably well from a volume perspective, but the problem begins to emerge if you try and use anything but the heel down technique, because as soon as you lift your heel off the pedal, it starts wobbling around and really isn't usable in that position. The other problem is more of a postural one. You can see that in this position, I have kind of a less than 90-degree angle here, and my ankle is actually in dorsiflexion. So I really have to use the ankle muscle and the calf muscle alone to strike the pedal. And that's really just because of where I can set this chair. Really, a better angle would be to have kind of a greater than 90-degree angle here and be sitting higher up so that I can use heel up technique or heel down technique comfortably. Rather than trying to move the couch and move all the furniture, I think what I would like to do is just get this pedal off the couch and onto its own freestanding kick platform. So this is an older Tama strap drive bass drum pedal. It's got this collapsible base, which is nice and lightweight. It works okay if you have your weight on the heel, but if you want to try heel up technique, you can see that the top here is not very static. You really need to have the beater impact on something, and in this position that has to be up against something vertical. But a more compact and practical way to do this is, of course, to reverse the beater and then have it come out the other side. Now, some pedals are capable of doing this, some are not, and an issue with this one is, of course, that the angle is so short that you really only get about a centimeter or so of travel on the pedal before the beater impacts the body of the pedal or whatever it's clamped to. So today we're going to kind of take this apart and reconfigure it and try and construct something to stabilize this pedal and give this beater something to hit. So this outer spring sits on a wheel which is affixed to this six-sided shaft, and the six-sided shaft obviously mates with this cam assembly that holds the beater itself. So if we remove the spring, we can flip this around and see that it is indeed held in place by some set screws. On the far side here, we just have an acorn nut, which we can remove. So we can remove that. And over here on the axle, which is the round part of this hex shaft, there are some screw detents where this part and its set screw attach. So now if we push on this end of it, the shaft should just come out along with the bearing. And what we can do, since this is a hex shaft, there are essentially 6 positions that we can mount this cam in. And the direction we want to rotate it is up and away from me like this, so that we get more travel when we have the shaft of the beater reversed. And then rotate this one position over until it clicks in, and there we go. So now I'll reinsert the shaft. The set screw are still in the same position, but we have changed the beater angle significantly. So now when we flex this beater by about 45 degrees, we get a useful point of impact where we can build a little pad for this to connect with. Of course, the problem we run into now is that this strap now has to go a much further distance all the way around this cam. So I think what we should do is replace this strap with something longer so that this pedal can be in a more neutral position. It appears to be made of a couple different layers of nylon or some kind of thick stranded textile, and it is held in place essentially just by screws. And then on the top of the cam, it's held in place with a screw and a little almost two-sided tooth piece of metal so that it bites into either side of the strap like so. So given that we have pins, we can really put anything we want into this strap. We don't necessarily need to specialty order a longer piece of ballistic nylon. And I think something that would work really well for this purpose is just paracord. This is more or less high-strength shoelaces. And we can just adjust the length of the strap by pulling down on these ends of the cord, and that's pretty close. I wouldn't want it to be necessarily too much higher than that. So what I think we have to do is just take a piece of wood and use that as a base plate so that we can mount the pedal on it, mount the surface, and then connect them by means of this toe clamp. So in a typical setup where we're using this with an actual bass drum, we would fit this clamp around the rim or the hoop of the bass drum and then tighten it down so that it grips. And I think we'll just use this mechanism. What we do want to do though is isolate it from vibrations that get transmitted down to the floor, because I'm sure my neighbors below would very much appreciate it. So at the grocery store I found these little miniature tennis balls, which you can tell from the paw print are intended for fetch with your miniature sized dog. But I think if we cut these in half, these will make perfect vibration isolators. For the actual mounts of the pedal, what I think we need to do basically is add a thin layer of wood and then either another piece of thin plywood on top of that. Then we need to come up with some kind of blocking so that we can get a beater surface up here. So I've got this thing covered in some black fabric. Obviously, I don't have a career as an upholsterer, but I realized that we should put the fabric on before we put this in place, because when the beater engages on whatever this tower is, it's going to transmit vibration down through this wood and down through this piece of wood down here below the fabric. So if we have a layer of fabric in between, that should minimize vibration traveling down through the floor. What I think would be good is if we use a dowel or a rod of some kind and mount this sort of as its own little beater sticking here, and then use the flat top surface as the impact point, and that should act as something of a shock absorber. Finish cutting these blocks here. Both of them are slightly wedge shaped, so they add up to a nice little angle for the striking surface. And then we can set this felt beater on top. And I have in mind this little L rod here, which we will slip through and screw down. And of course we will just cut off the L portion. feels really good. As you can see, the angle on this is a nice 5 or 6 inches of throw from the beater position, and I've wrapped some fabric around the original beater here so that where it contacts, it's not quite making so much noise. Well, there you go, an inexpensive homemade kick drum practice pad made out of more or less found materials. I think it works pretty well. I've been using it for a couple of weeks and I haven't had any complaints from the neighbors, and any of the pain that I had in my foot is subsiding, so I think it's ergonomically a much better solution. I know that there are professional designs from larger manufacturers. I think Prologix is one, where you can buy a device that more or less does this. I would love to hear about those if you've had a chance to use those. I haven't used them myself. They seem a little bit on the expensive side for what they are, but now having seen how much effort goes into a DIY one, perhaps it is worth the price. As always, I'd like to say a huge shout out and thanks to my supporters over on Patreon. It really means the world to me to have your support. It means that I'm able to take the time to make and edit these videos, so thank you very much. And if you're interested in getting early access to all of my new videos, as well as a little bit of bonus content, head on over to patreon.com/extralife and become a supporter today. Well, I think that about does it for today. This was quite successful. It's been super useful. I've been using it and improving my kick drum rudiments, and it was quite a lot of fun to build. And I hope it was useful for some of you who are maybe considering doing something similar. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.